Most minds are weak, not because they lack intelligence, but because they fear the weight of power. In this video, we strip away that fear. I will show you how to build a mind so disciplined, so cold, so unshakable it paralyzes those who dare to stand before you. Power does not reside in muscle, gold, or rank. It lives in the unseen fortress of the mind, calm under pressure, calculating in chaos, merciless in judgment. Few possess it. Fewer still dare to forge it. Tonight, we walk through the shadows of human nature, where morality bends and strength begins. Not in kindness, but in control. If you seek comfort, turn away. If you seek dominion, step closer. For what follows is not mere thought, it is weaponry. A fear is not born in the eyes of your enemy. It is born in their mind, long before you speak, long before you act. The question is simple. How do you make your very presence command obedience, hesitation, even paralysis? The answer lies not in brute strength, nor loud declarations of power. It lies in the subtle art of psychological dominance. History remembers those who mastered it. Take Cesare Borgia, his mere arrival in a room shifted the air. Why? Not because of his title, but because no one could read his intentions. A face calm as marble. Eyes that seemed to see deeper than flesh. A man who gave away nothing, yet seemed to know everything. This is the first law of fear. Mystery creates tension, and tension breeds control. People are unsettled by what they cannot predict. They rely on patterns to feel safe. Your smile, your tone, your reactions. Remove these patterns, and they stand before you exposed, like soldiers without armor. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone left you uneasy without saying a word? Why did it work? Because your mind, desperate to explain them, created threats that may not have even existed. Now imagine turning that same force outward. Imagine walking into any setting, boardroom, negotiation, confrontation, and carrying silence like a weapon. Not passive silence. Controlled silence. The kind that makes others question what you are thinking, what you are planning, and what you are capable of doing. This is not theatrical intimidation. It is not about scowling, posturing, or playing the brute. Those who try that are transparent, and the transparent are easily countered. Instead, cultivate a presence of quiet authority. Speak less than others. Hold eye contact longer than comfort allows. Never rush to fill the space with words. The longer they wait, the more their mind works against them, painting images of your strength far greater than you could ever declare aloud. Consider the courtroom of history. Leaders who ruled through fear were not always the most violent. They were the most unreadable. Stalin's silence made generals betray each other before he lifted a finger. Cardinals whispered in dread about Pope Alexander VI, not because of his speeches, but because of the cold, deliberate pauses between them. Understand this: fear thrives in uncertainty. Your task is to become the architect of uncertainty. But do not mistake fear for hatred. Hatred breeds rebellion. Fear, when refined, breeds obedience. This is where psychological precision is essential. How do you strike the balance? You begin by controlling your emotions, publicly and privately. Show nothing unless it serves you. Anger, frustration, even joy. These are vulnerabilities when displayed at the wrong moment. People learn your weaknesses through your reactions. Strip them of this map, and they wander blind. Then, master the art of calculated unpredictability, not chaos calculation. Reward when expected punishment looms. Remain silent when provoked. Smile when others expect outrage. These subtle inversions plant seeds of fear far deeper than threats ever could. Because threats are cheap, but Uncertainty makes men betray their allies, second-guess their courage, and whisper your name in corridors where you are not present. Here lies the true psychological insight. Fear is rarely about what you are doing. It is about what they imagine you might do, and imagination is a crueler weapon than any sword. But let us turn inward for a moment. Ask yourself, can you truly maintain such a mind? Can you walk through the world revealing nothing, holding composure as men lie, provoke, and test you? Few can. Most crack under pressure. They reveal themselves. They speak when silence would have conquered. Which is why the next step is not about presence at all. It is about forging the emotional detachment necessary to wield fear without flinching. That is where real power begins. Mercy clouds judgment. Compassion weakens resolve. Emotion, if uncontrolled, becomes the leash others use to lead you. Ask yourself, how many times have you acted against your best interests simply to avoid guilt? How many times have you compromised power to preserve feelings? The world does not reward those who hesitate. It devours them. Consider the ruler who cannot bear to dismiss an incompetent advisor, the leader who spares an enemy out of pity, the negotiator who reveals too much, hoping to be liked. Each becomes a slave to their own sentiment and a victim of their own conscience. This is why emotional detachment is not merely a tactic. It is a fortress, one that shields you from the storms of manipulation, betrayal, and the desperate pleas of the weak. Look to history. Julius Caesar pardoned many who once raised their swords against him, believing mercy would earn their loyalty. Yet it was those same men who struck the final blows in the Senate. Compassion did not buy devotion. It bought his death. Contrast this with Caesar Borgia, who rewarded loyalty swiftly and punished betrayal with surgical precision. His measures were not cruel for cruelty's sake. They were deliberate, calculated, devoid of sentiment. And because of this, his enemies feared him, his allies respected him, and no one dared to test the limits of his will. This is the nature of emotional detachment. It does not strip you of humanity. It arms you with clarity. It allows you to see people not as they wish to appear, but as they are, driven by self-interest, fear, and opportunity. Yet detachment is not born of cold blood. It is forged through discipline, through learning to pause when emotion demands reaction, through training yourself to ask, not what do I feel, but what serves me. Imagine a man insulted in public. One response, rage, retaliation, a public spectacle. Another, silence, a measured glance, and a quiet strategy set in motion that night. Which man holds power, the one who satisfies emotion, or the one who masters it? Understand this, those who control their emotions control their enemies. Why? Because emotion is predictable. Anger lashes out, fear retreats, desire bargains, guilt concedes. The manipulator studies these impulses like a hunter tracking prey, setting traps where he knows his target will step. But the detached mind, it moves like shadow, unreadable, ungraspable, immune to provocation. When you cannot be provoked, you cannot be controlled. And when you cannot be controlled, you inspire something far greater than admiration. You inspire unease. However, detachment is not cruelty. Cruelty is reckless, drawing hatred like blood draws wolves. Detachment is measured. It punishes without malice. It rewards without affection. It acts according to advantage, not emotion. This is why kings executed traitors at dawn and dined with their families by night. Why generals ordered harsh discipline, yet spoke of loyalty as if it were sacred. Because the appearance of care can coexist with the practice of calculation. But here is the danger: most who attempt detachment confuse it with apathy. They withdraw too far. They become statues. And statues, though cold, command no fear. The secret is balance. To appear composed yet alive, empathetic yet immovable, human but untouchable. So I ask you, can you silence the tremor of conscience when action demands it? Can you withhold mercy, knowing it will cost you more than cruelty ever would? Can you make decisions that stain your hands, yet strengthen your throne? Few can. Most would rather feel righteous than remain unbroken. Which is why the next step is crucial. Not silence, not composure, but the ability to manipulate morality itself, to twist it from a chain into a weapon. Morality. The word drips with sanctity, yet reeks of illusion. What is right? What is wrong? Ask 10 men, and you will hear 10 conflicting answers, each cloaked in the authority of conscience. But here lies the truth: morality is not a constant. It is a weapon, one that shifts shape depending on who wields it, and against whom. The weak cling to morality as a shield. The powerful use it as a blade. Look to history. When Pope Alexander VI sought to expand his family's influence, he wrapped ambition in the robes of divine righteousness. Was it holy work or ruthless conquest? Both. Neither. It depended only on who told the story. This is the essence of moral illusion. It is not about virtue. It is about perception, and perception can be sculpted. Ask yourself, when you made your last ethical decision, was it truly born of principle? Or did you, like most, justify what benefited you most and call it noble afterward? Here lies the psychological insight. Humans cannot tolerate the weight of hypocrisy, so they disguise self-interest beneath the language of morality. This is why men who steal call it necessity, why rulers who slaughter call it justice, why the ambitious speak of greater good, when what they mean is greater gain. But the Machiavellian mind does not drown in these illusions. It learns to shape them. It learns that morality is not fixed. It is flexible. That what is seen as virtue today may be vilified tomorrow, and what is condemned today may be celebrated by the next regime. Consider Napoleon. To monarchs, he was a tyrant who betrayed the sacred order of kings. To his soldiers, he was a liberator, bringing merit over birthright. To history, he is both, because morality bends to the lens through which it is viewed. So how do you use this illusion to paralyze others? First, by refusing to be trapped by it yourself. A rigid conscience is a chain. It binds your will to the approval of others, forcing you to fight battles on their terms. Second, by mastering the art of moral framing. Present your actions not as what they are, but as what others need to believe they are. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he called it an act of necessity to restore order to Rome. In truth, it was rebellion, but his framing was flawless. By the time his enemies labeled him a traitor, half of Rome saw him as its savior. This is the lesson. The narrative defines the morality, not the deed. Now, consider the psychological application. When dealing with adversaries, cloak your strategy in righteousness. Speak of fairness while quietly rigging the game. Invoke duty while pursuing self-interest. Preach loyalty while setting traps for the disloyal. And when you act ruthlessly, do so under the banner of principle. Punish not out of anger, but for justice. Remove rivals not for gain, but for order. Advance your interests not through ambition, but through service to a higher cause. People will forgive nearly anything, if they can call it moral. But there is a darker level still, one reserved for those who wish not only to protect themselves, but to dominate completely. It is the art of making others question their own sense of right and wrong. Confuse them, praise their integrity, then tempt them with betrayal, call their mercy weakness, then demand it when convenient. Make them doubt not only you, but themselves. Why? Because a man unsure of his own morality cannot judge yours. He hesitates, he delays. And hesitation is where power is seized. Power often lies not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. A single glance can unsettle. A pause can threaten more than a shouted command. And silence, true, deliberate silence, can weigh heavier than 1,000 words. Why? Because the human mind despises uncertainty. It races to fill the void with meaning, fear, or both. History remembers those who mastered restraint. Consider the silent council chambers of Venice, where verdicts were decided behind locked doors, and no decree carried the name of its author. The condemned never knew who condemned them. The fear of unknown hands made the Venetian state untouchable. Or think of Talleyrand, the French diplomat who could sway kings and emperors with a single, measured pause. When pressed for an answer, he would smile faintly and remain still. The silence, charged with unspoken judgment, forced others to speak and reveal far more than they intended. This is the first principle of silence. The less you say, the more others reveal. Ask yourself, how often have you spoken too soon? Revealed your intentions before necessity demanded. Offered explanations no one requested only to weaken your own position. Words once spoken cannot be withdrawn. But silence leaves room for fear, for doubt, for imagination, and imagination left unchecked creates monsters far greater than reality. Yet silence alone is not enough. It must be paired with restraint, self-mastery in the face of provocation. Because silence without composure betrays itself. A trembling hand, a twitching lip, an impatient sigh. These are cracks through which others see your weakness. The detached strategist knows this. He waits, calm as marble, while others grow restless in the void. And when they break, when they speak first, confess first, justify first, he already holds the advantage. This is why restraint is so rare. Most people cannot bear to wait. Their ego craves response. Their pride demands retaliation. But the disciplined mind knows the true victory is not in reaction. It is in observation. Consider the courtroom of history again. When the Borgias faced enemies, they did not shout threats or make grand proclamations. They let silence hang heavy over every chamber, every dinner, every audience. Their adversaries, unable to read their thoughts, assumed the worst, plotting desperately to defend against dangers that may not have even existed. This is the second principle of silence. The unknown is always feared more than the known. Psychologically, it is simple. People fear what they cannot measure. They fear the pause before judgment, the gaze that offers no hint of mercy, the leader who listens more than he speaks. This is why restraint must be deliberate, not timid, not hesitant, but controlled. Speak when it serves you. Remain silent when it traps others in their own assumptions. Each word becomes a calculated strike. Each pause, a tightening of the invisible noose. But there is an even deeper layer. Silence does not merely guard your secrets. It makes others doubt theirs. Try this. When someone lies, do not expose them immediately. Let silence linger. Look at them long enough for discomfort to bloom. Say nothing. Their mind will betray them faster than any accusation. When you hold silence well, you become a mirror. People see their guilt reflected. They see their weakness illuminated. They begin to wonder, not what you are thinking, but what you already know. And that question, that single, gnawing question, is what turns silence into power. But power is not merely in silence. It is in what follows. The ability to act decisively when restraint has served its purpose. Because the moment will come when the pause ends, when the unseen calculation becomes action. And how you strike determines whether fear hardens into respect or shatters into rebellion. That is where strategic cruelty begins. There is a difference between cruelty and recklessness. One builds power. The other destroys it. Many who seek to rule believe fear alone is enough. They lash out wildly, thinking blood will bind loyalty and terror will cement obedience. Yet history buries such men quickly. Reckless aggression breeds rebellion. Strategic cruelty breeds control. Understand this distinction, or risk becoming the very tyrant people unite to overthrow. Consider Vlad the Impaler. His reputation for cruelty spread far beyond his borders. But study his actions closely, and you will see a method. He did not impale peasants at random, nor slaughter without cause. His brutality was precise. Public against traitors, restrained toward the loyal. The result: merchants traveled his roads safely. Villages paid their dues without fear of ruin, and enemies thought twice before crossing him. This is the first law of strategic cruelty: punish only with purpose, and let the spectacle speak louder than the sword. Ask yourself, when you discipline, is it to satisfy anger or to shape behavior? When you strike, is it out of impulse or out of design? A ruler who cannot answer these questions courts disaster. Because cruelty without calculation invites chaos. It erodes respect, it breeds hatred, and hatred is a dangerous seed. But cruelty cold, deliberate, and measured creates a different effect. It draws a clear line in the mind of every observer. This is what happens to those who defy. This is why obedience is wise. Psychology confirms it. People fear not suffering but uncertainty. A punishment carried out with logic, even if severe, provides clarity. One delivered in rage provides none, and men fear a tyrant less than they fear a madman. Now look to Caesar Borgia, who understood this principle with deadly precision. When one of his commanders, Ramiro di Orco, grew too harsh in pacifying a province, Borgia staged his execution, leaving his body in public as a warning. The cruelty served two purposes. It pacified the people through fear of rebellion, and it reassured them that Borgia himself was just, capable of punishing excess even in his own ranks. The message was brilliant. Harshness exists. Directed. Purposeful. This leads us to the second law of strategic cruelty: fear must never outweigh respect. Push too far, and men will prefer death to servitude. Rule with discipline, and they will obey out of instinct, not hatred. Ask yourself, would you rather be remembered as a sovereign whose rule inspired trembling respect, or as a butcher whose reign ended in revolt? The key lies not in how much cruelty you employ, but in how you frame it. Call it justice, call it order, call it the price of peace, and do not use it often. Overuse dulls its edge. Like a blade drawn too frequently, it loses its sharpness and its fear. Instead, learn to combine cruelty with reward. The punishment of one followed by the generosity toward another creates a psychological contrast, one that magnifies both. The punished fear your wrath, the rewarded praise your favor, and those who witness both are left uncertain which fate awaits them. But there is a deeper mastery still, one that separates the ruler who survives from the ruler who endures. It is the ability to remain composed as cruelty is delivered, neither flinching, nor savoring it, nor apologizing for it. Because once cruelty is shown to be personal, driven by anger, ego, or vengeance, it ceases to be strategic. It becomes reckless again. So I ask you, can you wield cruelty without hatred? Can you punish as a craftsman strikes his chisel, calm, deliberate, shaping the stone without cracking it? Can you stand above the act, as though you were merely its instrument, not its author? For only then can you build true fear, one that lasts, one that commands. But cruelty alone cannot forge an unshakable mind. For that, we turn to the final fortress, the architecture of composure itself. Composure is the throne upon which true power sits. Without it, fear dissolves, respect crumbles, and even the illusion of control shatters under pressure. But what is composure? It is not calmness alone. It is the ability to appear unshaken, even when the world claws at your walls. It is the art of moving as though nothing can wound you, even as daggers press against your ribs. Ask yourself, how many times have you revealed weakness through reaction? A twitch of anger, a flash of fear, a slip of the tongue when silence would have been victory. One crack in the facade, and all who watch know exactly where to strike. This is why composure must be more than an act. It must be architecture, planned, fortified, and unbreakable. Look to Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher, emperor. Rome burned around him, plagues, rebellions, and the slow decay of empire. Yet he wrote of the mind as a citadel, one that storms could not reach. His composure was not born from peace, it was carved in chaos. This is the first lesson. Composure is not natural, it is engineered, and like any fortress, it must be built layer by layer. The first layer is emotional discipline. You cannot govern others if you cannot govern yourself. The mind must be trained to pause before reaction, to weigh response like a general placing troops. When insulted, you do not flare. When provoked, you do not retaliate. You wait calm, deliberate, until action serves advantage, not impulse. The second layer is detachment from outcome. Most men panic because they fear loss of wealth, status, loyalty, reputation. But the strategist understands that no single loss breaks him, that each setback can be reshaped into leverage. This knowledge, cold and mathematical, makes panic unnecessary. The third layer is the mastery of presence. You do not merely remain calm, you appear unshakable. Your stance, your voice, your silence, all must project control, even when uncertainty gnaws at your core. Because people do not follow truth, they follow perception. Consider the court of Louis XIV, the Sun King. His nobles quarreled, schemed, and plotted constantly. Yet he never revealed irritation. He stood composed in every audience, his stillness a silent reminder that while others chased favor, he was favor itself. This is why composure is contagious. When others see you calm in crisis, they doubt their own fears. When they see you unmoved by insult, they question their own attacks. When they see you serene while enemies circle, they wonder, what does he know that we do not? But composure is not only outward, it is internal. And this is where most fail. They can hold their mask for a moment, but inwardly they tremble. Their thoughts scatter. Their pulse betrays them. To master this, you must train the mind like a soldier. Through reflection, through discipline, through rehearsing betrayal, loss, and attack, not with despair, but with strategy. Ask yourself at every turn, if the worst occurred, what would I do? How would I use it? By rehearsing disaster, you strip it of its sting, and once stripped, panic loses its grip. This leads us to the highest layer of composure, the ability to weaponize calm. When all else breaks, alliances, trust plans, it is composure that commands. Because a calm man in chaos becomes a symbol, a leader, a force others anchor to. But here is the danger. Composure, once achieved, tempts arrogance, and arrogance blinds. You begin to believe nothing can shake you until something does. Which is why the next lesson is not about appearing strong. It is about ensuring no one dares to test your strength, and that requires turning composure into legend. Power is never loud. It is silent, subtle, invisible until it strikes. The true strategist does not shout commands or demand obedience. He plants doubts. He bends perceptions. He shapes the battlefield of the mind, where control feels like choice and submission feels like loyalty. Ask yourself, which is stronger, to force obedience or to make others believe it was their idea to obey? This is the essence of unseen control. It is not dominance through fear alone. It is influence woven into silence, morality, and composure, so deeply that others cannot trace the source of their own compliance. But beware. Power gained through cunning must be guarded with discipline. One misstep, and the illusion shatters. Now I leave the question to you. How far would you go to command the minds of others, without them knowing? Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe for more Machiavellian strategies. And share this with those bold enough to face the shadows of power.